Real America's Voice presents The Sleeping Giant. Available now. The Charlie Kirk Show starts now.
We should have a lot of the things that I think everybody wants to see. Who would not want voter ID? Only somebody that wants to cheat. Think of it. We don't have voter ID, and the Democrats don't want it. And the reason they don't want it is because they want to cheat, because there's no reason in the world, and I love that debate, Lindsay. I love saying, well, why don't you want voter ID? And you watch them say, I don't know. I just make them vote. No, it's a terrible thing. So anyway.
The American people demand Senate Majority Leader John Thune bring a vote on the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, and let's have proof of citizenship to register to vote. We have this one moment in history with Donald Trump at the helm, with a trifecta Republican government. I say nuke the gosh darn filibuster, pass law after law after law.
That interview went viral and senators went into action.
However we do this, all right, whether it's part of the spending bill this week, whether it's a separate bill, whether we have to stay there, and do a standing filibuster, whatever it's going to take, we got to get this passed. We've got to secure our elections. I can't imagine a Republican senator that would vote against, making sure that you have to have proof of citizenship to register to vote and to vote. Now, how could anybody? I don't know how a Democrat could be against this.
Yeah.
What exactly did you mean when you said that you should nationalize elections, and which 15 states are you talking about?
I want to see elections be honest, and if a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it, because, if you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do them anyway, but when you see some of these states about how horribly they run their elections, what a disgrace it is, I think the federal government, when you see crooked elections, and we had plenty of them, and by the way, we had them last time, but go to 2020 and look at the facts that are coming out. Rigged, crooked elections. If we have areas, take a look at Detroit, take a look at Pennsylvania, take a look at Philadelphia. You go take a look at Atlanta. Look at some of the places that horrible corruption on elections. And the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved. These are agents of the federal government to count the votes. If they can't count the votes legally and honestly, then somebody else should take over.
But the Constitution says it should be states that administer elections, Mr. President. That's what the Constitution says.
They can administer the election, but they have to do it honestly.
Democrats used to believe that border security and immigration enforcement were just common sense ideas. Don't believe it? Take their word for it.
Americans are right to demand better border security and better enforcement of the immigration laws.
We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked.
We've had 5 million undocumented workers come over the borders. It has become an extraordinary problem.
All Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country, and we must do more to stop it.
Biden, yes or no, would you allow the cities to ignore the federal law?
No.
Any city should listen to the Department of Homeland Security. The city made a mistake not to deport someone that the federal government strongly felt should be deported.
Just because your child gets across the border, that doesn't mean the child gets to stay.
We do not think the comprehensive health care benefits should be extended to those who are undocumented workers and illegal aliens. We do not want to do anything to encourage more illegal immigration.
People say, well, why can't you stop illegal immigrants from coming here? And the number one answer we give is when they come here, they can get jobs, get benefits against the law because of fraud. Illegal immigration is wrong, plain and simple.
Open border for you're doing away with the concept of a nation state.
Our nation, like all nations, has the right and obligation to control its borders, and no matter how decent they are, no matter their reasons, the 11 million who broke these laws should be held accountable.
For decades, these weren't controversial or radical ideas. The only thing that changed is them.
The radical left knows exactly what they're doing. They want to steal the election. We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, and we're going to the Capitol. They need to take back our country.
Events in Washington have taken a violent and tumultuous turn.
January 6th wasn't just a moment in history. For thousands of Americans, it was the moment their voices were taken.
It's insurrection.
They were persecuted, hunted.
Seditious conspiracy.
But behind prison walls, something unexpected happened. They found their voice again.
Started singing the national anthem.
We took it up to him at Mar-a-Lago. He goes, I'll put my voice on it.
Our supporters made this go platinum.
Real America's Voice is telling the real story of January 6th like you've never seen it before.
Everybody, this must be peaceful.
This is
Every day, there's a battle for your mind raging. Information coming from every angle with the will to deceive. Fear not. You found the place for truth. The voice of a generation that still has the will to believe in the greatest country in the history of the world. This is the Charlie Kirk Show. Buckle up. Here we go.
All right, welcome to the Charlie Kirk Show. We are on February 4th already. My goodness, where's the time going? Here at the Bitcoin.com studios in Phoenix, Arizona. We've got a lot to get to today. This is a jam-packed show, and I just want to preview that in hour 2, we've got an incredible journalist that's been covering the Epstein saga for the last 6 years. He's basically interviewed everybody that there is to name in that whole saga. We're going to separate fact from fiction. There's a lot of blurring
There's a
of
lot
lines.
of fact at this point and a lot of
fiction. And by the way, there's no need for lies because the truth is just as sensational as the lie. But there's a lot of lies. I've been working on this. I told you guys yesterday we're going to do it right today. So we're going to do that in hour 2. But I just want to earmuffs for the little kids. There's going to be some graphic nature just given the nature of the story. So please, if you're watching at home with young ones, just please consider that. We're going to do our best to navigate it and be professional. Charlie would always say 11-year-olds. We always think about the 11-year-old in the audience. So we're going to try and keep that rule at the top of our minds. But it is a graphic story, so we're going to get into it. Hour 1, we're going to get right into it. Yesterday there was a preliminary hearing with Tyler Robinson, the accused killer. I certainly believe he's guilty as sin. And then we're going to have Senator Coach Tuberville, who's going to be joining us talking about the SAVE Act. So lots to get to. Without further ado, I'm going to throw it over to Blake because Blake had the job of going over through all 4 hours of the hearing yesterday.
All righty. So this is not the trial itself.
Mm-hmm.
We'll obviously be covering the trial every day once it happens. This is yet another preliminary hearing. There's been a lot of these. You've heard about them where they've been trying to keep cameras out of the courtroom. They've been litigating how exactly Robinson will be dressed when he's in the courtroom and so on. And what the claim yesterday is they're making a bid, they being the defense team, to disqualify the entire county attorney's office from prosecuting this case. So these are the county attorney's office for Utah County where the shooting took place.
Can I stop us right there? Because there's, if you go on the internet, it's like the FBI, the FBI, the FBI. This is not a federal case. This is being tried at the local level. Yes.
The FBI assisted in the initial investigation. Conceivably, there could be federal charges someday. You never know. Like, for example, if something went awry with this. But right now, this is a state case in Utah. Utah County, that's where Provo is, I believe,
sure.
And one of the largest counties, but it's not Salt Lake. And so they've been handling this case. And what has emerged is that the daughter of one of the prosecutors on the team was present at the shooting. And so the defense team is arguing that based on this fact alone, that she was one of 3,000 people there, approximately, that it should it creates a conflict of interest and it should disqualify the entire county attorney's office, which if they succeed, it would mean it would have to be taken over by either another county attorney's office or by the state AG. Huge delay, messes everything up, just drags the case out more, creates more uncertainty. That's entirely what their plan is. Now, thankfully, legal experts who've commented on this say this is a pretty big long shot. It'd be one thing if she was one of the one or two witnesses to the event.
Right, of course.
This is 3,000 people, and plus everyone saw it very quickly online, and so the claim that there's some sort of special aspect to that is a long shot. But they were asking them about it in court yesterday, and what's interesting about it is it gives us an insight as to what evidence they've collected so far, what they're planning to bring, and also what the defense against it might be. So, for example, they had Agent David Hull, one of the investigators. They had him on the stage, and they were just cross-examining him.
Yeah.
The state itself was actually cross-examining him about all the evidence they'd found, because they're pointing out, did any of this have anything to do with the daughter at all? And he's saying no over and over again. So,
yeah, by the way, this was a surprise to some of us because, you know, we've been told that the preliminary hearing where the evidence will be sort of first presented is not going to be until May. So we got to see this little small glimpse into some of the way the defense is thinking, some of the way the prosecution is thinking early.
Yeah. So, for example, they're going back and forth on the evidence they have, like the fact that they found what they, for example, were able to find in Tyler Robinson's apartment.
Yeah,
let's show 388.
Was a search warrant on the defendant's house executed in this case?
It was, yes, down in St. George.
And was evidence obtained from his house?
It was, yes.
What kind of evidence?
Kind of putting me on the spot, but if I recall, there were some bullet casings that had some inscriptions on. There were some tools that were believed to have been used to make those inscriptions. There were targets, I believe, that had been used, and also targets that had been purchased recently or just prior to the event. There was ring doorbell camera footage obtained from other residences down there, and then a number of electrical items, laptops and such that were collected as part of the warrant.
So we have that, for example. We also have, they just talk about finding DNA at the scene, for example, 385.
Is DNA consistent with the defendant's DNA found on the firearm that was found at the scene?
Yes, the DNA on the firearm was consistent with that of Mr. Robinson.
And then, interestingly, they follow up on that, where then the defense team shows up and they try to do some back and forth on this. Let's do 387.
Are you aware that the DNA evidence that was seized from the scene consisted of a mixture of at least 5 different individuals?
I'm not a DNA expert, so...
So you know enough to say what helps him, but you're not going to answer whether or not there were 5 individuals mixed into that DNA?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Okay. And you're certainly not qualified to interpret complex DNA mixtures, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
It's a little bizarre that they're going that intently at it in what is, again, a preliminary hearing, yet I guess that's a sign of what we might have to expect when this finally goes to full trial.
Certainly.
They're going to try to muddle the waters on DNA evidence.
There's a ton of reasons why you would find multiple people's DNA on anything, actually.
But
because people shed DNA, but to see one with a pattern that's connected to multiple different scenes, multiple different places, plus all the other evidence that there is, including video evidence. By the way, there's a clip on video evidence that we have, right?
I'm trying to get the exact number because it's not. I don't see it in our sheet. But they had a back and forth where they just asked him, because the reason they're asking this is they're diving into, they're kind of unpacking. You didn't catch this person because of a video taken by the daughter in question. In fact, she didn't have a video of the shooting itself.
So I think it's 390, actually. So this is Agent Hall responds to video on the rooftop, explains 2 different recordings, 390.
That roof that was recorded in that video, first, is there other surveillance of that person in that location at that time running to that spot?
There is additional footage, yes.
Where does that come from?
That came from the Utah Valley University security cameras.
All right. Is there another individual that also recorded a person running after the shooting from the roof?
Not to my recollection, no.
Any video from someone, you recall a video from someone in the Hall of Flags who may have recorded someone running after the shooting?
Yes, there was an individual who recorded from the Hall of Flags. It's an interior video looking through the windows, but I believe an individual is visible on the rooftop also in that video.
Now, there was another, though, where they just ask him, do you have other stuff? And he says, actually, we have a ton of surveillance footage from the university of someone, kind of tracing the suspect off campus. And then he says they have Ring doorbell footage from Orem, not just we knew about from St. George's where, around that area, but they also apparently have some from the vicinity of the shooting, tracing the suspect into the woods where they later found the firearm. They say they have security footage at businesses on the road back from Orem to St. George, where so you get the sense, we don't know it all for sure, that they have a very strong documentary record of basically everywhere Tyler Robinson was. We haven't seen all of those videos. We'll presumably see them when the actual trial
But it felt like the big headline from this is it really came into focus that they are trying to get the entire prosecution dismissed because one team member, and this was a hand-picked crew of prosecutors, one of these prosecutors happened to have an 18-year-old daughter on the scene that day. Yeah. We'll play more video on the other side of this break. We'll be right back.
The radical left knows exactly what they're doing. They want to steal the election. We're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, and we're going to the Capitol. They need to take back our country.
Events in Washington have taken a violent and tumultuous turn.
January 6th wasn't just a moment in history. For thousands of Americans, it was the moment their voices were taken.
It's insurrection.
They were persecuted, hunted.
Seditious conspiracy.
But behind prison walls, something unexpected happened. They found their voice again.
Started singing the national anthem.
We took it up to him at Mar-a-Lago. He goes, I'll put my voice on it.
Our supporters made this go platinum.
Real America's Voice is telling the real story of January 6th like you've never seen it before.
Everybody, this must be peaceful.
This is not the story you were shown.
I take responsibility.
This is the story they live.
Government entrapment scheme that this actually was.
The J6 Patriots are no longer staying silent. They are speaking, they are standing, and they are telling the truth.
You can't kill us. You can't beat us.
Scan the QR code or visit RealAmericasVoice.com. Real America's Voice presents The Sleeping Giant. Available now. Welcome to Real America's Voice Real Minute. Your quick look at the powerful stories of faith and freedom, inspiring audiences across the nation. Angel Studios presents.
I'm Bo Davidson with your Real America's Voice Real Minute. Did you ever wonder what truly happened in the COVID-19 pandemic and whether Anthony Fauci would ever be held accountable? I think we all have. Filmmaker Jenner First has an upcoming documentary that searches for truth, transparency, and accountability called Thank You, Dr. Fauci.
Governments lie.
Anthony Fauci put everyone on the planet at risk without their consent.
It's beyond suspicious.
Research caused a pandemic, killed 20 million, and cost $25 trillion. Fauci would prefer a lie.
Public trust, national health, and global security are at stake as this documentary digs through thousands of pages of documents and interviews with former officials.
Welcome back
back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. Securing the border is top of mind for Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security Kristi Noem this morning. She's in Arizona, where they're talking about securing the border specifically as it relates to the border wall. Let's listen into some of the speakers right now.
She hears you. She doesn't just hear you, but she responds to you. We spent several hours last night just listening to agents, right? Secretary, not a person in that room left that room if they wanted a picture, if they wanted a minute with her. She listens to you. She gets out in the field, right? We finally got a secretary that's actually supporting us, and you see it, not just here, but you see it in her actions. You see it in the commissioner's actions. We see it in Todd Lyons' actions every day. And so we're just getting started, right? If you think 2025 was a good year, 2026 says hold my beer. You guys have a good day.
Please welcome senior official performing the duties of the Director of the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, Todd Lyons.
Well, first off, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. Just like the chief said, I've done my whole adult life pretty much in law enforcement, and more than 20 years doing immigration enforcement. I've never seen the teamwork that we have right now, and I've never had the leadership like President Trump and Secretary Noem. Border Patrol sees it, ICE sees it, OFO and AMO. We never had a secretary that was out there on the front lines with us every day, willing to put herself out there to be seen, to actually know what we do every day. And that's what the amazing thing is. The partnership with the Border Patrol has been amazing. The fact that you all have secured the border so quickly lets us do our job in the interior. And I got to tell you that the men and women of ICE, ERO, Homeland Security Investigations, we value the partnership of having Border Patrol and OFO side by side with us out in the communities now, arresting those bad guys that are finally out there. Chief Paul said it best. We didn't need any new laws. We just had to have the opportunity to enforce the laws we've trained for our whole lives, and that's what we're doing right now. I always say that it was always hard to do law enforcement by executive order. We're not doing that anymore. The executive order we have now from the president and the secretary is go do your job, and that's what we're doing. And this last year has been remarkable results. But we still have about 1.5 million individuals in this country that have a final order of deportation, and more than 800 of those are serious, serious criminal actors. And the men and women of Border Patrol, the men and women of CBP and ICE are out there every day doing it. And one thing is for sure, not only do the American people appreciate what we're doing, but all these moms and dads and angel families all around the United States that under the last administration had to suffer horrendous losses because of poor policies. But now with Secretary Noem and President Trump at the helm, it's not going to happen anymore. Again, thank you very much for being here.
Please welcome Commissioner of the United States Customs and Border Protection Agency, Rodney Scott.
Well, good morning. Well, first, I want to thank everybody for being here today. But I want to especially thank everybody that carries a badge in their wallet or pins it on their chest. But in this specific group, I also want to give a shout out to those of you that just wear that mission of protecting this country on your heart, regardless of the badge. Border security is a team sport, and we got to where we are today because of that effort. I want to acknowledge a few that are or are not here today at the federal level. But Department of War, Department of Justice, Department of State, Health and Human Services, and even Department of Interior have played an important role here today, and I'll touch on that a little bit. But we also couldn't do this without some of our state and local partners, and even the next county over from Santa Cruz. I thank them for being here today. But we're here today to celebrate you, but we're also here to celebrate the accomplishments that you made, but it was because of the amazing vision of the President of the United States and his leadership. I want to thank the Secretary for traveling down here today as well, and I think you'll understand how important that is in just a second. But specifically on one aspect of it, and that is that in less than a year, we have provided the most secure border in the history of the United States. And let me caveat that for you. That's not a numbers issue. I spent 5 years of my career patrolling right where you're sitting right now. I can tell you what this area was like, the dope loads that were coming through here, the multi-vehicle caravans that were coming through here. Part of border security isn't just the arrests, it's knowing what's going on. And we have a higher level of situational awareness today on the borders, knowing what's coming into our country than ever before. We came here, though, I want to talk why we're here. At least this is my perception of why we're here. We came down to the border because, unfortunately, the media likes chaos, and they like friction, and they like anything that arguments. They don't necessarily like to go present or show America a secure community. It's boring to them. So coming here today, we're forcing the media to come right to the border and see the most secure border that this country has ever had, because it's important to America that this story doesn't stop at the border. This story touches every American because border security touches every American. So border security, to the simplest steps, is just simply knowing and controlling who and what's coming into this country consistent with law. And we talk about how do we get here, I think it's very important that we touch on that. The efforts that every single one of the agents and personnel, military, wherever your background is, that played a huge role, and I'm not discounting that. But I want to highlight from my perspective how we got here. We had a president of the United States that stepped up and said, we're going to put America first. We have a president of the United States that had a vision. We had a president of the United States that spoke with authority. And even before he was inaugurated, as he was building out his team, he sent a very clear message. Border security is national security. It's going to be a priority going forward. And I don't care what the title behind your name is. If you work in the federal government, you're going to support it. And on day one, we took action on that. So those of you that don't know, on day one, we started building a high-performance, low-drag team from every agency that had any nexus with border security, and literally started figuring out how to implement the president's strategy. That's how we got here today. And as you've heard from some of the other speakers, no law changed. The big, beautiful bill just started rolling out. It was literally go do your job, and most importantly, I have your back. And for that, I thank the president, and I thank the leadership of DHS as well. The president simply understood and still understands that if we can't control, first off, know, and then control who and what enters our country, we have no national security. So I want to thank him for that. But we're not done. So yes, we're here because the border's super secure, but I also want you to know what that means. This border wall actually makes every single agent more effective. Every investment we in CBP make in infrastructure and technology across all of CBP lets the actual agent, the human being, do things that only the human being can do. Interview the people we catch. Actually do the inspections, have conversations with people so that we're actually vetting them so we know who and what is coming into our home. That is having a snowball effect to where now we're doing interviews at the border that within minutes that information is being handed off to ICE so that we can find people that snuck into this country or got released by a corrupt prior administration, and we can go get them out of the communities and make this place safer. At the ports of entry, we're doing more inspections than ever before. We're seizing more fentanyl than ever before. Why? Because President Trump understood that chaos provides cover for criminals. And when we reduced the illegal immigration at the border and shut down that chaos, it allowed Border Patrol agents, Customs and Immigration Enforcement agents, DEA, every agency out there to focus on the real threats, the networks that keep bringing these threats to us. We've just begun. We've got a lot to go. We've got a lot to do, but we're building border wall at an unprecedented pace, as the chief mentioned. We're rolling out technology. And most of all, we're hiring more Border Patrol agents and more officers to make sure that we provide America the border security that they deserve. I just close out how I started. Thank you, President Trump. Thank you, leadership within DHS. We're a long ways, but we are locking in this border security for generations to come before this administration is over. And every one of you in the audience plays an important role in that. Thank you.
Please welcome the 8th Secretary of United States Department of Homeland Security, the Honorable Kristi Noem.
Well, good morning. It is so wonderful and such an honor for me to get to come here and spend some time with all of you. And we're here to talk about how secure this border is and to celebrate that we have 1 year of a secure border and a secure United States of America. I want to say thank you to the gentlemen who all spoke before me and thank them for their leadership. To Paul and Rodney and Todd and Chief, just thank them for all that they've done to lead the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security in carrying out the mission that President Trump committed to fulfill for the people that live in our great country. I also want to thank Tom Homan for being the border czar. He was busy up in Minneapolis today and wasn't able to be here, but we thank him for his leadership as well. But most of all, we thank President Trump for the guts and the love of this country to do the right thing, to make sure that when he talked to the American people, he talked about the fact that what we had going on here in this country under the Biden administration was the greatest humanitarian crisis that we had ever seen in our history, and that it needed to be fixed. And the way that you fix it is you just enforce the law. That you go out there and say the laws need to be enforced and they need to be applied equally to every single person. And that Americans come first because they're the people who have built this country, and that they're the ones who are here working jobs and putting their kids through school and doing the right thing to make sure that our freedom and our liberties are secured. So I want to thank him for his leadership, for the fact that he told the American people what we needed. He said we needed a wall. And we have a wall, a big, beautiful wall that President Trump also wanted painted black so that it would endure for a long period of time, that it would look like the strength and stamina that the American people have, and that it would be something that would continue to protect us for generations to come. But I also wanted to come here today and thank all of you. I'm looking out in this group of individuals and I see a group of patriots, people who stepped up during difficult times and led us through challenges, but also are still here today making sure that we continue down the path of what we committed to the American people. I want to thank all the individuals I see from CBP, from ICE, the Coast Guard. I see our law enforcement partners, the Department of War, National Guard, all of our local sheriffs and law enforcement that have partnered with us, and then those individuals who kept the faith, that came alongside of us and encouraged our law enforcement, and stood beside them and supported them and their families. We know that no one can do their job with excellence unless their family's okay and they're taken care of and that things are right at home. And so those individuals in this community that supported our law enforcement through those times are incredibly important, and we're grateful for them. The high degree of talent and experience that we have here today is a testament to not just President Trump's commitment, but also to the people that have secured the border and have also worked every single day to make sure that America is safe again. In President Trump's first year back in office, we've delivered the most secure border in American history. And we did it with the immediate aftermath we were facing from that humanitarian crisis that was created from Joe Biden's open border policies. It is so quiet here now today that sometimes we even forget how bad it was just a little over a year ago. And the importance of the accomplishment that has happened over this last year cannot be forgotten. Hardworking Americans all along this southern border were devastated. They were trying to do their jobs, educate their kids, and protect the future when they were handed this humanitarian crisis and saw the horrors of what was happening when millions of people were crossing our border unvetted, when they were trespassing onto private property. We had crimes being committed. We saw women and children being trafficked, people dying, and crimes continued to be perpetuated as people were allowed to come into the country unvetted and unstopped. You know, yesterday I was in Eagle Pass, Texas, and I had the chance to tour the border, not just with our Border Patrol agents, but also with the Texas National Guard and the Texas Department of Public Safety. And we looked at some of the areas that were the hardest hit during the Biden border policies. In September of 2023, Eagle Pass saw an unprecedented crisis face them. In fact, they had to declare a state of emergency due to the rush of illegal aliens that were coming into their town and through their community to get into the United States. On one day, they saw over 10,000 people come through that area to get into the United States unvetted and illegally. In just a couple of days, it doubled the population of their town. And it caused a crisis not just for their medical care facilities, their businesses, and their families, but it absolutely crushed them and their economy. And their crime was rampant and overrun. And just last week, or a week or so ago, I got to spend some time in Brownsville, Texas, spent some time with farmers and ranchers. And we talked about what their lives were like just a little over a year and a half ago. How they saw trespassers come onto their property, cut their fences. Their livestock were loose, and sometimes they incurred death there as well. They had crimes, people breaking into their homes and their facilities. They were finding dead bodies on their ranches. In fact, we saw unprecedented death from those illegal migrants that were coming into our country because of the heat exhaustion, and they also were forced into water, and people were drowning because of the crush and the push to take advantage of those open border policies. Those ranchers were talking about how different it was for them now. The fact that their ranches are safe again, that they don't have drug cartels running drugs across their property and down their roads and endangering their children and their schools. Many of the schools in many of these communities had to put up barriers and protections and boulders and rocks just between the roads and their schools to keep their children safe so they could go in and out and get their education in a way that would protect their lives. When things like this happen, people are not just challenged with the crime, but they're challenged with the fact that their economy is hurt, their businesses are hurt, and also that these illegal migrants were being victimized each and every day. At worst, illegal aliens threatened the lives of American citizens with crime and violence and drugs. But they brought with them a recognition that the rule of law didn't matter in America anymore, that laws weren't going to be enforced, and it sent a message around the world that people could just come to America and no one was going to do anything about letting those dangerous individuals come in with terrorists, suspected terrorists and criminals that were allowed to come in with those illegal migrants. And while the left tries to tell us many times that it's somehow compassionate to allow that kind of chaos, it isn't. It was dangerous, not just on this side of the border, but on the Mexican side of the border as well. We saw many of those illegal migrants not be able to survive the brutal terrain. They didn't survive the river crossing. Those causes of death, of heat and water, were dangerous, and the left behind so many bodies that in some counties along the border, they had to install migrant morgues just to pick up the dead bodies that were passing away on their way to try to get into the United States. In fact, during the Biden administration and those open border policies, we saw even the UN declare that the United States and Mexico border was the deadliest land route in the world. Countless people were sexually abused and trafficked over and over again and exploited. One story that I remember that impacted me so dramatically was a horrifying story of a father who paid a smuggler $1,000 to bring his wife and his 2-year-old daughter into the United States. Once they got over the border, those smugglers took that mom and daughter into a stash house and kidnapped them and held them hostage for a ransom and said that father would not get them back unless he paid another $23,000 to them, and said if he did not immediately pay, that they would do things to his daughter that he couldn't even imagine. That was happening on a daily basis because of that invasion. Over those 4 years of chaos and destruction and death, many of the left said that it was compassionate. They said it was compassionate to let millions of people come in unvetted and be subjected to murderers and smugglers and cartels and gang members. Was it compassionate to make Americans share their communities with criminals? Was it compassionate to encourage men and women and children to break the law and to put their lives at risk, knowing that they could be victimized along the way? And was it compassionate to demonize those federal law enforcement officers that took an oath to uphold the law and to keep Americans safe? You know, the left and Democrats dare to harass, threaten, and dox our officers, assault the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security and our federal law enforcement. And they try to say that enforcing our immigration laws and arresting and deporting illegal criminals and violent criminals is inhumane. Well, what about the victims of that illegal crimes? What about the flow of drugs that were coming over our border and killing our next generation of Americans? What about the Angel families who lost someone that they dearly love, that they'll never have back again and don't have a future with? They don't talk about the Laken Rileys, the Jocelyn Nungarys. They don't talk about the Rachel Morans. And they don't talk about the thousands of Americans that we've lost to drug overdoses and to poisonings. In fact, the flow over this border of illegal fentanyl has been cut in half since President Trump has been in office. And since he has secured this border and built this wall, 56% of the fentanyl has stopped coming into our country and saved millions of lives. The Democrats and the left say that compassion was that invasion, was that humanitarian crisis. But President Trump says that compassion is taking care of people. Joe Biden and his policies during those 4 years lost 450,000 children. Many times they placed them with sponsors that abused them, that trafficked them. The government paid people to take our children and to traffic them. Since President Trump's been in office, we've located 145,000 children that were lost, and we're not going to stop till we find every single one. Because of President Trump's leadership and his bold action, this country keeps breaking historic records. In fact, we have the lowest crime rate in this nation right now because of President Trump and his strength and securing our border that we've ever had in the history of this nation since we've been tracking crimes. The lowest murder rate that we've ever recorded in this country, and that's because we enforce the law. And we hold criminals accountable for what they do to perpetuate violence against the American people. In fact, for the last 9 months, the Border Patrol has released 0 illegal aliens into the interior of the country. It's incredible, the work that they do every day. And that's what happens when you fight for law and order. Overall, Customs and Border Protection has recorded the lowest number of encounters in the agency's history in 2025. Daily encounters have fallen by 95% over the last year. While the daily average of apprehensions in the Biden years was over 5,100 per day, in the last year it was less than 250. In addition to keeping the illegal aliens out, we're also protecting the American people from the deadly drugs that are coming in. And just in 2025, CBP seized over 600,000 pounds of illicit drugs. The death rate and the fentanyl deaths in this country have dropped in 1 year under President Trump. Because he secured the border, fentanyl deaths have gone down 30%. We can't wait to continue to keep working to save more American lives. We have to continue to keep ramping up our efforts and do all that we can to protect our children. And we're thankful for President Trump's vision to invest in technology, invest in people, and invest in the resources that we need to do our jobs. He did it in 1 year. You think about what this country has gone through over the previous 4 years and what a turnaround that we've seen because we have a president in the White House that puts the American people first. It's incredible. President Trump believed that we still have a country, and he believed that it was a country worth fighting for. Now we're hard at work to make sure it stays that way. And when the American people put President Trump in the White House, they said enough is enough. They chose him. They chose law and order. They voted to build the wall. They voted to send President Trump back to the White House. And it reminds me of John Adams. He said back in history, when they were building this country and founding this country, he said the very definition of a republic is a government of laws, not of men. We are a government of laws. We are a republic. And for 4 long years before President Trump, we saw what it was like when people put men above our laws. We saw how people were victimized and hurt and abused. And Americans didn't want to live like that anymore. The beauty of our republic is that our people have the freedom to choose. And when they elected President Trump, they chose differently. They chose someone who recognized that a country with no border is no country at all. A country that doesn't enforce its laws is a lawless country. We had never experienced the kind of chaos before in recent history that we saw during the Biden administration. And the American people rejected it. They rejected it and its lawlessness and chose to return to law and order. And with President Trump and all of you great law enforcement officers in front of me and those across the country that do their work every day, we've got a promise of a bright future and a promise of an amazing country for years to come. You have stood up and stood on the line to make sure that we have freedom and liberty for our children and our grandchildren for years to come. Thank you for the work that you do. I pray every day that God will continue to bless you. Bless the work that you set your hands to and your families. They'll continue to bless this great country so that we would know that we are all Americans and we're all here. The rest of the world follows America because we are the ones that provide the hope and the future for what the entire world should be. So may God bless you, and thank you so much for being the great Americans that you are. Thank you.
So like the Secretary said, and the Commissioner as well, we're celebrating the monumental control that we've got over the border. But in doing that, our main purpose here is to thank you, the men and women of CBP and DHS that are getting the job done. We can provide you all the policies, the money, the protection, the coverage, but you have to go out there and deliver on it. And so I know that most of us say we don't need to thank you, we don't need an award, but it brings me great pleasure to be able to give an award. It gives me extreme pleasure to be able to do it in a sector that played such a huge part in my career and my development as a leader. And so with that, if I can have Agent Jack Gamblin step up. So today, Jack Gamblin is going to receive the Newton Azarack Award. I'm going to read to you why he's receiving that award. On June the 19th of 2024, Border Patrol Agent Jack Gamblin was critical in the apprehension of a Tucson homicide subject who shot at himself and other law enforcement officers in the Bryan Terry Station's area of operation. Responding to the area, Gamblin found the suspect vehicle speeding his direction while the suspect was firing at Agent Gamblin. Despite no cover and little to no concealment and at great risk to his personal safety, Agent Gamblin retrieved his service rifle, squared himself off to the threat, and returned fire, neutralizing the threat. BPA Gamblin's exceptional courage and action went above and beyond the call of duty, reflecting the highest credit upon himself and the United States Border Patrol. Agent Gamblin, if you can come over. Agent Fleming. Fleming. And Agent Gundry. Agent Fleming and Agent Gundry will also be receiving the Newton Azarack Award. On Thursday, February the 20th of 2025, Border Patrol agents Brandon Fleming and Bryce Gundry witnessed a devastating head-on collision that resulted in both vehicles being engulfed in flames. At tremendous personal risk to themselves, they selflessly dove into the wreckage, pulling the trapped civilians to safety and ultimately saving their lives. BPA Fleming's and BPA Gundry's actions, heroic actions, exemplify the core values of the United States Border Patrol and stand as a testament to their courage, selflessness, and unwavering commitment to protecting others. BPA Fleming and BPA Gundry went above and beyond the call of duty. Their bravery brought great credit upon themselves and the United States Border Patrol.
Sorry.
You've been watching the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, in Arizona, talking about border security, also touting all of the advancements the Trump administration has made when it comes to securing the border and limiting the amount of people that have come through. And now you're watching a number of Border Patrol agents being lauded for their work along the border in terms of securing the border. We'll, of course, have continuing coverage of this throughout the day. But now let's get you back to the Charlie Kirk Show.
NADH, which is the power source for every cell in your body. So if you want more energy, if you're feeling kind of low energy, sluggish, fatigue, check out Strong Cell. And here's the best part. When you do it through this show and with the promo code Charlie at strongcell.com, you get 20% off. So right off the top, 20% discount. And it's risk-free. So you get a 90-day money-back guarantee trial period. 90 days. You need to take this for about 4 to 6 weeks, once a day. Just a little bottle. You shoot it. It tastes great, but it's got this NADH enzyme that's going to help, and it delivers it straight to your cells. So it's at the cellular level. And promo code Charlie at checkout, 20%, 90-day money-back guarantee. But you need to take it for about 4 to 6 weeks. You do it for 4 to 6 weeks. Be disciplined. You take it daily. It will change your life. I really believe that. And if you don't get the results that you want, that I'm saying you're probably going to get, you can just send it back. Money back guarantee. So strongcell.com, promo code Charlie. Check it out today. Amazing people that run that company as well. Let's get into Tom Homan. Held a press conference in Minneapolis this morning. He obviously was deployed by the president to kind of tighten the ship.
Yep. So we had the clashes between ICE and all of the agitators,
the commies,
insurrectionists,
the
insurgents,
they're insurgents
in Minneapolis. And the goal is have fewer controversies and still make sure that people who don't belong in this country are getting out of this country. Now, part of what people have seen, and we should lead with this, is he has announced they surged 7,000 people into the Minneapolis
3,000. Was it 3,000?
Maybe it's 3,000. But he's announced that they're dialing back that amount of surge. Yeah. And so
this
he
is the
announced
big headline.
417.
I have announced effective immediately. We will draw down 700 people effective today. 700 law enforcement personnel.
Okay, now, the why?
The why is coming now. And also just keep in mind that this has to happen at some point. We're not going to perpetually keep 15, 20% of ICE in Minneapolis, as satisfying as that might be sometimes. But he explains that the reason they're able to pull these out is that they're getting new cooperation from the state of Minnesota, the city of Minneapolis, that they previously were not able to get. So this is 418.
We currently have an unprecedented number of counties communicating with us now and allowing ICE to take custody of illegal aliens before they hit the streets. Unprecedented cooperation. And I'll say it again. This is efficient, requires only 1 or 2 officers to assume custody of a criminal alien target rather than 8 or 10 officers going into the community and arresting that public safety threat. This frees up more officers to arrest or remove criminal aliens. More officers taking custody of criminal aliens directly from the jails means less officers on the street doing criminal operations. This is smart law enforcement, not less law enforcement.
And it's worth saying, Tom Homan I just think he's so disciplined. In his role, that is so. Tom Homan is a field general. We love Tom. He's been on the show multiple times. He loved Charlie. Charlie loved Tom, and we continue that relationship with Tom. So he's great. He's a field general. But more importantly, for this role right now, is he's a great disciplined messenger. And so, of course, all of us in the base are going, hey, you're drawing back. What was it not? Is it only the worst first? Because I'm an all of them guy. I'll just be really clear. You break our laws, you invade our country, you participate in the erasure of the American culture that we love and we want to defend for our next generation, our kids and our grandkids. You come into this country like that, heck no, you're out. There's no negotiation. There's no sob story that's going to move me off that point, okay? You do not bend the knee to these terrorists. So Tom, being the great messenger that he is, made sure he addressed exactly that concern. 409. Clip 409.
For those who are not a national security threat or public safety risk, you are not exempt from immigration enforcement actions. If you're in the country legally, you are not off the table. And let me be clear, President Trump fully intends to achieve mass deportations during this administration, and immigration enforcement actions will continue every day throughout this country.
So let me explain why this is important, what's happening here. and why the base needs to get behind what Tom's doing with the drawdown. Now, it was BBC, it was NBC, it was Washington Post. All of them led with the drawdown. So why is that important? Because, and Breitbart had a great piece on this, it's that the poll shows the majority of voters back President Trump's immigration policy. Even despite all this media magnified Democrat claims that the enforcement is hurting his poll numbers. What they don't like is they don't like seeing the stuff in the streets, okay? There's normies. I personally have no problem with it. Let me just be very clear. I have zero problem with it. But there's normies, there's independents. All of them support mass deportations. They want to get illegals out, but they don't want to see the images. And the Democrats know that, so they want to weaponize the images. So we got to make it so that they can't do that, all right? You got to be thinking strategically and the chess moves ahead of time.
But there's stuff to flag here, again, you need fewer agents. It's vastly less disruptive and vastly more focused on the worst actors when you're letting them in jails, letting them into prisons, letting them actually take these malefactors right when they're most easily available and they get them out of the country. And it has to be emphasized over and over again that the left does not want this. The left wants criminals in America. They want them robbing Americans. They want them raping Americans. They want them killing Americans. And you can prove this. You can go to the Washington Post this morning. This is a headline today, Washington Post. Several states move to ban local cooperation in immigration arrests. So Maryland is going to basically ban any of their local law enforcement agencies anywhere in the state from working with ICE by, for example, letting them into jails. They're trying to do this in New Mexico, in New York, in Hawaii, in Virginia. The only reason to do this is that you want foreign criminals in America.
And you want it for the census and the electoral college, congressional seats, and voters.
But it would be so easy for them to say, okay, just take these criminals, and they'll try to divert it that way. And then they can complain if they go after someone who hasn't committed any crime besides breaking into this country illegally.
Correct.
They could do that. But instead, they are so fanatical, they want the worst criminals here. They would pay money to fly them into the country because they did.
Yeah, they want Maryland dad to be sipping margaritas in Maryland. So, but that's not going to happen. We're going to get our mass deportations. You either cooperate, do it the easy way, or you do it the hard way. We'd much rather have it the easy way. Epstein, hour 2, you're not going to want to miss it.
This holiday season, Real America's Voice is proud to partner with our friends at Angel Studios for a special giveaway you won't want to miss. As they launch season 2 of their hit series Homestead, we're giving you the chance to win an exclusive Homestead hat absolutely free. Everyone who becomes an Angel Guild member using our link is automatically entered to the contest. When you join, you're supporting meaningful pro-American storytelling, and you're supporting RAV at the same time. Scan the QR code on your screen right now, or text the word RAVAngel to 75802. After you scan or text, make sure you follow the steps provided. When you complete the steps and join the Angel Guild, you'll be automatically entered to win that exclusive Homestead hat, a perfect holiday gift for yourself or someone you love.
Be one of the first 50 people to sign up and win a hat automatically. Hurry while there's still time.
So scan that QR code or text RAVAngel to 75802. Happy holidays from all of us at RAV.
Minnesota's headlines are getting wild. Tim Walz and Ilhan Omar are being accused of massive fraud, and it's so bad, all you can do is laugh at this point. So from Real America's Music, the label that brought you the #1 hit, Anthem of the Free, comes a brand new song from singer-songwriter Natasha Owens, The Somali Waltz. Let's make the music industry mad and run this to #1. Scan the QR code or search The Somali Waltz on iTunes and buy it right now. The Somali Waltz, available everywhere. Now is the moment to put your brand in front of an engaged, loyal audience through Real America's Voice. When you advertise on Real America's Voice, you're not just running an ad, you're partnering with trusted voices like Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, and other influential hosts. backed by millions of monthly listeners.
What's happening? Because of a real voice, man. I watch it all the time.
Real America's Voice rocks.
Real America's Voice gives sponsors the chance to put their product front and center, displayed on screen and highlighted by our anchors during exclusive segments and live events.
Head to freetrumpknife.com.
This means your brand becomes part of the conversation as it happens.
Secure your spot before it's too late.
Join us today and make your brand part of the news conversation that America's viewers trust. Real America's Voice, where your message is seen, heard, and remembered.
Welcome back to this Real America's Voice news break. I'm Terrence Bates. It has been a very busy day for the Trump administration when it comes to illegal immigration and border security. Just moments ago, we took you to Arizona live, where DHS Secretary Kristi Noem was speaking about border security, more specifically about continuing to build the border wall along that stretch. She also used the opportunity to praise many of the Border Patrol and immigration ICE agents who are working along that area. She, of course, said that they've been doing a very good job and pointed out some specific instances thereof. In the meantime, the Department of Homeland Security also cutting the number of federal agents deployed to Minneapolis by some 700. That's the word from Border Czar Tom Homan this morning, as he is now overseeing the illegal immigration operation in the Twin Cities. Homan also saying that while his focus remains on catching and deporting violent criminal illegal aliens, anyone in the country illegally is a target.
I keep hearing it and hearing it and hearing it. We're not surrendering the president's mission on a mass deportation operation. If you're in the country illegally, if we find you, we'll deport you. But this is about target enforcement operation, and that's what we're going to be doing.
While the Border Czar is working to shore up operations in Minneapolis, the vice president's focus today is on rare earth minerals.
So this morning, the Trump administration is proposing a concrete mechanism to return the global critical minerals market to a healthier, more competitive state. A preferential trade zone for critical minerals protected from external disruptions through enforceable price floors. We will establish reference prices for critical minerals at each stage of production, pricing that reflects real-world fair market value. And for members of the preferential zone, these reference prices will operate as a floor, maintained through adjustable tariffs to uphold pricing integrity.
And just into our newsroom moments ago, the man convicted of trying to assassinate President Trump while the commander-in-chief played golf in Florida will spend the rest of his life in prison. The 59-year-old would-be assassin was caught after a Secret Service agent noticed him lurking in some bushes along the golf course. He was found guilty on all charges against him back in September and unsuccessfully tried to stab himself after the verdict was returned. As for today's sentencing, prosecutors asked for life in prison without parole. The defense asked for a sentence of 27 years in prison, since the failed assassin is set to turn 60 years old this year. In addition to life in prison, the guy also was slapped with a consecutive 7-year sentence for one of his gun convictions. Immigration and Customs Enforcement says that no operations are planned for Super Bowl 60 in the San Francisco area this weekend. The National Football League's chief security officer says there will, however, be federal law enforcement at and around the big game.
Our Department of Homeland Security, who's been our partner for more than 20 years now, is made up of more than 20 different departments. We'll send a variety of different agencies. That does not include ICE. There is not ICE deployed with us at the Super Bowl, and I don't believe there has been in the last several. But most of the other departments, from the Coast Guard to, many other agencies, are here.
Sunday's game is designated a Tier 1 event, which is the second highest security assessment rating for a large-scale event. Concern was raised about the possibility of ICE operations when it was announced that reggaeton artist Bad Bunny would be performing the Super Bowl halftime show. The performance likely will be totally, if not partially, in Spanish. In the meantime, there's a billboard that's set up in San Francisco's Fisherman's Wharf district that really is all the buzz this morning. There you see it. As you can see, it appears to support ICE, saying that Defensive Player of the Year is ICE. And in other headlines this morning, former President Bill Clinton and his wife, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, are set to testify before Congress related to the body's ongoing investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. The former First Lady is scheduled to be deposed February 26th. Her husband will face the House Oversight Committee the very next day. The agreement for the former first couple to testify avoids a contempt of Congress vote, which was scheduled to happen today. You probably remember the House Oversight Committee voted to hold the duo in contempt after they failed to show up for their previously scheduled deposition last month. Now, the Clintons appear to be singing a new tune, though. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'm Terrence Bates.
This holiday season, Real America's Voice is proud to partner with our friends at Angel Studios for a special giveaway you won't want to miss. As they launch season 2 of their hit series Homestead, we're giving you the chance to win an exclusive Homestead hat absolutely free. Everyone who becomes an Angel Guild member using our link is automatically entered to the contest. When you join, you're supporting meaningful pro-American storytelling, and you're supporting RAV at the same time. Scan the QR code on your screen right now, or text the word RAVAngel to 75802. After you scan or text, make sure you follow the steps provided. When you complete the steps and join the Angel Guild, you'll be automatically entered to win that exclusive Homestead hat, a perfect holiday gift for yourself or someone you love.
Be one of the first 50 people to sign up and win a hat automatically. Hurry while there's still time.
So scan that QR code or text RAVAngel to 75802. Happy holidays from all of us at RAV.
Minnesota's headlines are getting wild. Tim Walz and Ilhan Omar are being accused of massive fraud, and it's so bad, all you can do is laugh at this point. So from Real America's Music, the label that brought you the #1 hit, Anthem of the Free, comes a brand new song from singer-songwriter Natasha Owens.
Welcome back to the Charlie Kirk Show. Hour 2 is now underway, and as promised, we are going to dive headlong into everything
story.
Epstein. And we told you yesterday we wanted to do it right, and I had been hearing this gentleman's name mentioned in multiple different places as the guy that's been working on this for years and has interviewed all of the main players, maybe not all, but darn near all, including Jeffrey Epstein's brother and many of the alleged victims and so on and so forth. And so without further ado, we're going to welcome him onto the show. His name's Jay Beecher. He's an investigative journalist. He's British, so he also has an accent. You can find him at Substack, substack.com/@JBeecher. We'll have those on the lowers the entire time. We're going to blow the brakes. We'll go in and out, but we're going to blow the brakes in the entire hour.
There's a lot to talk about.
It's a lot to talk about. So welcome to the show, Jay. Honored to have you.
Thanks for having me.
From the motherland island there in the UK. So just by way of introduction for our audience that doesn't know who you are and what you've been up to, how long have you been working on investigating the Jeffrey Epstein saga, and maybe just some of the people that you've interviewed along the way?
Yeah, sure. So I got into the story by reading just a generic article about one of the allegations made by Virginia Giuffre, one of the most vocal Epstein accusers. And I was just going to write a Bob Basic article and, sort of copying what she said. And then I started to find some contradictions in there, and it led me down a rabbit hole. And this is 6 years ago. So for the past 6 years, I've been traveling the world, really interviewing Jeffrey Epstein's brother, some of the Maxwell family, but also Professor Alan Dershowitz, Virginia Giuffre's inner circle. And the accused and the accusers. So at the moment, the media just go one side and they'll interview the accusers. They'll print the allegations verbatim. There's very minimal fact-checking involved. They're just looking for sensational headlines. So I wanted to get both sides of the story so that people can make up their own minds and see the full facts.
Well, so, you know, I did a little bit of a pre-interview call with you just because I wanted to understand where you were coming from on all of this. Your Substack goes into great detail. I encourage people to check it out there. What brings us to this point now? There was a Transparency Act passed. President Trump signed it, despite some of his misgivings.
Which I feel a lot of his misgivings have panned out, because what he said when he was opposing it, he said there's going to be a lot of stuff in this that's going to hurt innocent people or kind of lead to a lot of wild allegations, and certainly embarrassing true stuff for a lot of people. Sure. We've seen that about Bill Gates. We've seen that about Larry Summers, Elon Musk, for example. Certainly some people have had real things embarrass them. But it also, at least you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, but I don't feel that it's blown open what some people were saying would be revealed, like a massive blackmail ring or the like.
And let me put a pin on that, because a fine point. You said something. You said we don't need to sensationalize the lies because the truth is sensational enough. And I think that's a 100%. Really good guiding principle for this whole conversation. Again, the whole hour about it. Yeah. So explain how we got here and what some of the new evidence is. And then I want to go through name by name, allegation by allegation.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, it stems back to a man being arrested for having sex. Well, he didn't actually have sex, but having a sexual encounter with underage girls. So this took place because originally Jeffrey Epstein was a typical sort of Hugh Hefner type. He liked to be surrounded by attractive women, and he was a creep. There's no whitewashing of Jeffrey Epstein. He was an absolute creep and pervert. But he did surround himself with girls between the ages of 18 and around about 25, some of them a bit older. So nothing illegal there. It wasn't until Virginia Giuffre came onto the scene, and Jeffrey at this time was well known for telling the girls, if you bring me more girls, I will give you extra money. It's sort of like a finder's fee. So he used this term recruitment, and it's quite sinister. It was more of sort of introductions. Sleazy as hell, obviously. But Virginia took it upon herself whereas Jeffrey Epstein didn't actually ask to get underage girls, Virginia went into her local community and got vulnerable schoolgirls who were around about 14, some of them were 16, 17, etc. And all of this is documented in the police reports. Virginia got them to lie about their ages. Another girl called Haley Robson, who was recruited by Virginia, got these girls to lie about their ages. So she would put them in makeup. She would put them in clothes that made them look more adult. And then she would drive them to Jeffrey Epstein. And once in the house, Jeffrey is actually documented as asking, are you over 18? And the girls admitted to the police that they had lied and said that they were over 18. So long story short, one of them spilled the beans. Jeffrey Epstein was arrested because he had committed a felony, even though he didn't know their age. And he took a lie detector test. The lie detector test proved that he was telling the truth, that he didn't know that they were under 18. But either way, he committed a crime. He went to prison. The story would have died there if it were not for the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was friends and associated with some of the most famous and richest people in the world, some of the most influential people, from presidents to prime ministers, Hollywood stars, directors, all sorts of people. And so the media wanted to latch onto this. Then at this halfway through the time, the story actually did go quite quiet. Then you had the QAnon, you had Pizzagate shortly before that, talking about elite trafficking networks at play. Then you had the Me Too movement come up right in the middle of all of this. And so people were focused on the Jeffrey Epstein scandal again. You had the original victims, and they are victims because they were underage. You know, these schoolgirls, although they lied about their ages, they still were vulnerable young schoolgirls. They started filing some lawsuits. There was about 6 different girls, maybe a few more. And then the lawyers thought, this is a great way to make some money. And then all these salacious stories came out. So you had Alan Dershowitz falsely accused by Virginia Giuffre. and this is the lawyer of Donald Trump. You had Donald Trump falsely accused by a woman, and it turned out to have been orchestrated. It was a hoax that was orchestrated actually by a producer of the Jerry Springer show. But then Virginia had fed into this narrative, this Pizzagate conspiracy of a global trafficking network. She said that she'd slept with foreign presidents, and then later admitted that she'd never met any in her life. But that wasn't picked up by the media intentionally, because that destroyed the narrative. And so it's dragged on and on and on. And then it became heavily politicized because it's become a great smear campaign. Anybody who was ever, snapped in a photograph of Jeffrey Epstein, anyone who had a cup of tea or a coffee with him, or some of his friends who had business dealings with him, they were suddenly targeted via guilt by association. And then there was a big build-up. How can we turn this against Donald Trump?
Well, exactly.
Now, I've been critical.
Yeah, well, and Jay, I think
I've been critical of him.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I don't consider you to be some fan of President Trump. It's interesting because I do think that you mentioned the Pizzagate, the Me Too, QAnon, all of that stuff, and the confluence of those stories mixed with President Trump coming into power, and everybody understood that President Trump knew Jeffrey Epstein and associated with him. We really have to sort of start there with the President Trump allegations, because that was long the assumption, is that we were going to find that President Trump had done some untoward things with underage women. Yes or no, and then expound on it. Has President Trump been, is there anything in there that would be criminal, that would be salacious, even embarrassing?
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I think it's very telling. So the only reason I agree with Donald Trump on certain policies, I disagree with him on others. I think that's healthy with politicians. I'm not one of these, believe them in everything. But I have not found a single piece of evidence to suggest that Donald Trump has done anything wrong at all. He was bound to have been in the same social circles as Jeffrey Epstein. We know that he had a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein at one time, and then he ended that relationship. And what's very telling is that from the very beginning, none of these vocal accusers and some of the genuine victims, absolutely none of them have accused him of doing anything wrong. In fact, Virginia Giuffre herself said that he was a gentleman, that he didn't do anything.
We just have to hop to the other side of a break. We'll continue on this in a second.
Sure.
1 second.
So, Jay, we'll let you continue here in a sec, but it's very funny to me that I feel like that's a pattern we've had for over a decade at this point. Like, when you think of how scrutinized Donald Trump's entire existence has been, every business relationship he's ever had, every political engagement he's ever had, and now this, it kind of is remarkable how clean he ends up coming out of everything. Yeah. Like, they couldn't get anything on his business other than, he lied to get a loan that no one complained about other than the state of New York. I don't know. I'm just digressing here. But yeah, it's funny here, even on this, he could have had something like Bill Gates, where it's not necessarily criminal, but it's like highly embarrassing. And they don't even have that, it seems. And I believe, as you said, a man who's criticized the president a lot.
Yeah, so with regards to Ukraine, I criticise him heavily, and I have criticised him quite heavily in the past. I've supported him in the past on certain things. I do it with all politicians. I'm not really I pick a team and stick with it no matter what. But on this, 1,000,000%, they are just weaponizing it to try and attack it. And I think they're devastated that they found no ammunition against him, and it's sort of backfired. I really do.
So, Jay, I asked you a very pointed question, and I said, besides, when we were talking before, I said, besides Jeffrey Epstein, because I do believe Jeffrey Epstein is a creep, he's a sleaze, he was a crook and a fraudster, actually, and we can get into that.
Yeah, definitely.
But who are the villains of this story? Because that is what's driving a lot of this. They want to see the list. They want to see who was sleeping with underage girls. And you gave me a very surprising answer. What was that?
Well, if people want to, so I do not victim shame or anything like that, because what I'm trying to do is expose the genuine victims in all of this. And there are genuine victims. And so those victims are the people who were recruited by adults. They were adults at the time. Virginia Giuffre, Haley Robson, and a couple of others. And yet that's the backwardness in all of this. They have been projected as the heroes of the story, when in fact they were the villains. And they have admitted that they went out of their way to target, groom, and recruit underage girls, schoolgirls, get them to lie about their ages, and take them to a rich guy who they knew would then abuse them. And yet the media, because that does not fit the narrative, they refuse to cover that. They have just canonized these people, and anybody who criticizes them is called a victim shamer. I've interviewed Virginia Giuffre's ex-partner, and he's openly admitted that whilst he was over 18, he was hunting down schoolgirls to sell to Jeffrey Epstein.
Jay,
and
hold
the police
that
have
thought.
that on record.
Yeah, Jason, hold that thought. The police have that on record. That's amazing. We'll have a repeat that on the other side of this break. 1 second. We are back. We are doing a deep dive on all the new allegations that have come out from this new Epstein document drop here at the Bitcoin.com studios. Really quick here, I want to tell you about our friends over at YREFI, YREFY.com. They are patriots. They love this country, and they love you, especially if you are finding yourself in a very troubling situation with private student loan debt that others will not touch. If you have defaulted or de-stressed private student loans, you need to check them out, YREFI.com, YREFY.com, and give them a chance to help you. They can lower your monthly payment. They can give you a custom-tailored monthly payment you can actually make. So if you're depressed, distressed, if you are even suicidal, I keep saying this, but it just blew me away that that's the state some people find themselves in when they are in debt like this. You don't have to be. They can help you. They want to help you. They'll even let you skip payments every 6 months up to 12 times without penalty. They don't care what your credit score is, and they love this country. They love students. They want to help you get out from underneath this burden. So check them out, YREFI.com, YREFY.com. You're going to want to do that for yourself, so check it out today. All right, more with Jay Beecher. Jay, I asked you who the villain was, and you said that there are real victims, these underage girls that were recruited. They were dressed up in fancy clothes and makeup, and they were told to lie about their age. Apparently, it sounds like Jeffrey Epstein asked if they were over 18. I'm not saying what Jeffrey Epstein was doing is okay, by the way. That's gross. That I just don't think that's even up for debate. Like, Jeffrey Epstein's a creep, a crook, a fraudster. And
but that's never really been up for debate.
That's never been up for debate.
Everything else that comes with it.
But how did this happen, and who else was involved is really the central question. And you're telling me that Virginia Giuffre, I believe I'm saying her name right, is implicated. The police know it, that she was the one that was going out grooming these young women, and she had an accomplice. I forget the name. And then that begs the question: what was Ghislaine Maxwell doing? Was she aware that these underage women were getting recruited?
Well, that's the travesty in all of this, is that the media just refused to report the truth because it doesn't fit the narrative. And it was Virginia Giuffre and a girl called Haley Robson, who Virginia had introduced to Jeffrey Epstein, who were going out of their way to find schoolgirls to make money. It was all financially motivated. They knew what they were doing. I have interviewed the mother of one of Virginia's victims. So Carolyn Andriano, sadly, was groomed by Virginia, given drugs, put on this life of prostitution, and eventually she was found dead in a hotel room, allegedly of a drug overdose. And so Virginia destroyed a lot of lives. But at the time, the Me Too mantra was believe all women, and the media were very adamant that they didn't want to deviate from that whatsoever. So Virginia's story was newsworthy. It was brilliant for journalists, because here she is saying that she'd slept with foreign presidents, that she'd slept with a prince of England, and just making all of these wild headline-grabbing, sensational claims that they didn't want to fact check it. They didn't want to fact check any of it. So if you want to look at the villains in this story, it is Virginia, it's Haley Robson, and a couple of others. So and Virginia's ex-partner, who I interviewed, and he quite casually just talks about how he went out of his way to find schoolgirls and girls to recruit, because he thought, well, that's an extra $200. And there's no shame there. The police know about it. He's admitted it on record to me and also in his affidavits, his depositions. And yet he's never been prosecuted. Virginia has been acknowledged with full proof and has admitted that she recruited schoolgirls whilst she herself was an adult, but they refused to prosecute her. The police wanted to prosecute Haley Robson, but then it went higher up and they decided to drop it and only go after Epstein. And now Epstein did take a lie detector test. The police were quite annoyed because the result came back that he was telling the truth, that he didn't know that they were underage. Fast forward 10 years or so, and suddenly you've got all these lawsuits coming in. You've got journalists who want to write stories because it's making them a lot of money. And you've got lawyers who want these articles and headlines out there because it's making them a lot of money. They've made over 100 million so far, just the lawyers alone. Because what they were doing, the lawyers, and this is well documented, they would get an accusation, they would approach the person who was accused, and then they would try to say, if you don't want this going into the press, don't want to be smeared, pay up. And that's well documented. There are emails in the Epstein files of the lawyers discussing this. And they've even talked about how they can first represent the accusers and then represent the accused and make sure that they keep these stories out of the headlines. I've listened to a secret recording taken by Alan Dershowitz where David Boies, who represented Virginia, admitted to him that he knew that Virginia was wrong, in his words, wrong, completely wrong, to accuse him. But he said, if you pay up, find some, in his words, Jewish lawyers, some rabbis, those were his words, pay up and this will go away. Now that's blackmail, it's extortion. And they would use the press, weaponize the press. With Prince Andrew, that catapulted the story back into the headline news across the world. Because here you had...
I want to come in there. You just mentioned David Boies. That's not going to be a name most people are familiar with, but that is a superstar lawyer. He's been involved in, among other things, he represented Theranos, which was that blood analysis company that was a huge scam. He's represented Harvey Weinstein, so he's certainly not deeply motivated, I would say, by protecting victims necessarily. He can play both sides of that. He represented Al Gore in Bush v. Gore. Like, this is a celebrity guy who's certainly been involved in high profile, and frankly, he's worked for some sinister actors, as we know with Theranos. Yeah, and so it'd be entirely believable for him to be a sinister actor in this case as well.
And in the Theranos case, he was found, him and his team, to have intimidated the whistleblowers. In this instance, what his MO seems to have been is let's take the Prince Andrew case, the allegations as an example. He knows that they're not true. Virginia had originally claimed that she didn't sleep with Prince Andrew at all. Then she claimed that she had sex with Prince Andrew in New Mexico. She wrote 3 pages going into lurid detail saying they went horseback riding together, had sex in the bathroom with champagne. Then under oath, she admitted that never happened. She'd never been to New Mexico with Prince Andrew. Then she changed it to that she'd had an orgy with Prince Andrew on the island. But then it was shown to her that she'd already written about this orgy, and it was actually, she claimed, with Jean-Luc Brunel, not with Prince Andrew. But they knew this, the lawyers, and yet they don't want to drop that. The journalists want to keep it going because they're making money from producing clickbait, and the lawyers want to get money from it. Now, Prince Andrew, when it comes to him as well, what David Boies would do is, and he said this during an interview with Piers Morgan, if he doesn't settle out of court, if he doesn't pay up, I will depose Meghan Markle, I'll depose his daughters, I'll depose all of his family. Knowing that can't happen because the royal family wouldn't allow it to happen. The judge at the same time refused to allow him to submit certain evidence from proving that Virginia had made false allegations against him. And the lawyers have been working with politicians even now, Jay, to get all of this together.
Jay, we got to take another quick break here, but we're going to keep going after the break. More Jay Beecher. Crazy stuff here. We'll be right back. Jay, we've got so much to get to here. I want to make sure we're moving quickly. I have 1,000 questions for you. And we've got this. We've got Boies with Guffrey here, a picture that we could throw up here. So it's just to kind of add a visual element to this, just so everybody can see this. Do you believe that Virginia committed suicide? I know her dad has said that he doesn't think that was the case.
Yeah, you just never know what to believe anymore with this, if I'm honest. So you've got I think she likely did. The reason that I believe that is because her web of lies was she'd stacked a lie upon a lie upon a lie, and I think it was slowly beginning to collapse because she was about to be deposed for the very first time. She was going to have her very first court appearance because she was being sued by Rena Rowe, who I've interviewed quite a lot, and because she'd made a false statement against Rena. And so whereas if you look into her past history, she's always settled out of court. So with Alan Dershowitz, she settled out of court, not financially, but she admitted that she was mistaken in accusing him. No, she wasn't mistaken. She lied. But with Rena, she was trying to prevent herself from being dragged into court. And the judge, 2 weeks before she committed suicide, had ruled that no, whatever happens, you must come into court and testify. Now, while she's in the courtroom, the defense lawyers, so Rena Rowe's lawyers, would have grilled her, and I know this for a fact because I helped them with certain information. They were there's a photograph of Rena Rowe leaving the courtroom with a 200-page report that I did, just compiling all of Virginia's lies with the evidence. And so what they were prepared to do was to use that as an opportunity to finally, under oath, force Virginia to admit the truth. And she would have been shown with this evidence, and she would have been confronted with it, and now it would have been covered by the newspapers. You also, at the same time, had her marriage breakdown. Her kids were taken away from her, which is very rare. You know, you don't often see children being taken away from the mother and the mother losing custody. So her life was sort of caving in.
Yeah, it does seem that's I think a strong narrative. But so bigger picture, I think an issue I want us to talk about when people do push the idea that there's not as much here as people thought. It's kind of a more mundane guy who had relations with underage girls, got caught, and then he also knew a lot of people, but there's not a bigger conspiracy or bigger behind the scenes thing. One thing people fixate on a lot is just Jeffrey Epstein's wealth. Even the vice president the other day was saying it should be investigated how he became so wealthy, because that seems very mysterious to people and that it must have some sort of dark explanation. Do you have an explanation for that that would be satisfactory to people? How did Jeffrey Epstein become this super rich and connected person like that?
Yeah, because I had the exact same thoughts. How the hell did a mathematician, like just a low-level maths teacher without any degree, become so wealthy? It was actually through fraud. A lot of it was through fraud. He was arrested in the, I think it was the late 80s, very early 90s. He was involved in he left Bear Stearns. So whilst he was a teacher, he'd been poached by one of his students' father, who was high up in Bear Stearns, and saw that he was very good with numbers, got him on board. He made quite a lot of money there. But then he went and left and made his own company with a partner. And now both of them were arrested because they said it was a pyramid scheme and they were engaged in fraudulent transactions. And Jeffrey Epstein made a hell of a lot of money, millions from that. His partner was sent to prison, and Jeffrey Epstein, for whatever reason, managed to get out of it. They didn't have enough evidence. Now his partner squealed like a pig and said, Jeffrey was just as guilty as I am. You know, he was just as guilty as this, but he got away with it. Then he got, as a client for his next company, Leslie Wexner. And Leslie gave him the keys to the kingdom because he was helping people to avoid paying taxes. And he did that by setting up offshore companies and shell companies in the US Virgin Islands. And so Leslie Wexner saw, wow, this guy is good. He's running my companies well. He's saving me a hell of a lot of money. I'm going to sign him power of attorney. And he did that. But then later on, it turned out that Epstein had stolen tens of millions of dollars from Leslie Wexner. Enough, actually, just about 25%, a quarter of the money that he stole from Wexner was enough for him to buy his island. And with more money that he'd stolen, he bought his place in France, his ranch, and he'd already got the house in New York from Leslie Wexner. And then also Leslie Wexner gave him sort of this aura of credibility. You know, he's representing Wexner. He could do me. So.
Jay, these darn bricks, we're going to hold that thought. We'll be back on the other side. 1 second.
Relentless in spirit. You're listening to The Charlie Kirk Show.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. So you're basically laying out a case, Jay, that he was good at one thing financially, and that was shielding people from tax liabilities. He was a tax evader, essentially.
Yeah. Not even, I'd say two things, a tax evader and also kind of a confidence game man. Like he wormed his way in with Wexner and maybe did valid work for the first couple of years. And then after that, it just seems he was soaking him. You mentioned he got that place from him. He basically got it for what, $1? He took a free $20 million home in New York off of him.
Yeah, exactly. You know, he was rewarded. He was seen as this great genius, sort of some asset. I think he exaggerated himself to some extent. He'd lied on his CV to get to Bear Stearns. But regardless, he knew how to get rich people to pay less taxes, and that was making those shell companies in the US Virgin Islands. His island, people think that he purchased this to have secrecy and to, you know, run some sort of strange operation. Well, no, it was originally just for the fact that if you're in the US Virgin Islands, you get certain tax exemptions. You pay so much less tax than you would in the US. So he set up all of these companies. And then he was approached by Noam Chomsky, by Woody Allen. He helped Woody Allen. He helped Leon Black. He had all of these different people who he would help pay less taxes. They would filter their money into the US Virgin Islands, into his shell companies. And then obviously they avoided paying millions and millions of tax. So they're going to like him. Then he built up all of these connections through that and through political donations. His political donations were not really because he believed in the politics that he was supporting. It was because he coveted, you know, famous names and famous faces, because that gave him more credibility, that gave him more access. And having that access and that ring of circles attracts more people to him.
Jay, so let me just challenge the premise here, though. I mean, is there any indication that he was a Mossad agent, that he was working with CIA? Because you say he didn't get arrested, but his partner did. Okay, was somebody protecting him? Then he's connected with Ehud Barak later on. You sort of start wondering, like, why is this charmed man so charmed? And does he have a handler? Does he have people that are greasing the skids?
Someone looking out for him. Yes. That's how he gets out of things over and over. Leslie Wexner is obviously a Jewish American. Was there a connection there that he was? Was he blackmailed? Did he blackmail Wexner? What is there any indication? Because sometimes it feels a little too convenient.
I know what you mean. No, I know what you mean. It's sort of like, this is the luckiest guy in the world, right? Gone from being a humble maths teacher. But there is no evidence that he was involved with Mossad, that he was in intelligence. His former girlfriend used to joke that, his son, he's so quiet and mysterious that he must be in the CIA. And then it sort of snowballed from there. But he did help. So he doesn't need to be a member of an agent to influence world politics and influence, some of the most influential people in the world. Because we can see that in his email exchanges. He's being contacted by some of the most powerful leaders asking him for advice. But that tends to be more, if you read between the lines of the emails, it's more the fact of his connections. And they're always asking him, can you connect me with this person? So one of them, I think it was the Sultan of wherever, asked him, how do I talk to Donald Trump? That's because he was associated with Donald Trump. Another one asks them for an introduction with Clinton. And they are talking about what we would deem intelligence. He was definitely... The Russia angle needs more explanation and more investigation. And you will start to see that over the coming weeks, any involvement with Russia. But I have not found any genuine evidence to prove that he was a member of Mossad. And when Jeffrey Epstein was asked, let's think, we talk about him escaping from sort of dodging one conviction early on for fraud. but he didn't escape two major convictions. So the first one being obviously when he was arrested in, I think it was 2007, and for sleeping with an underage girl. And he was asked during that time by Professor Dershowitz, are you a member of any intelligence thing? Do you have anyone who can shut this thing down? And he didn't. He said, I don't. I'm not likely, I don't have any of those connections. And they would have exploited that. They would have shut that down. And then years later, again, no one came to his defense. No one came to help him. If he had all of this information to blackmail people, he wasn't able to pull any strings.
But Jay, and just again, to keep pressing the point. So you spoke with Jeffrey Epstein's brother. You've interviewed him. He does not believe Jeffrey committed suicide. No. I guess the question would be, what do you believe after speaking with Jeffrey Epstein's brother? And if he didn't commit suicide, then it's apparent that there would be forces that wanted him dead.
Yeah. So when this is coming out, there are a hell of a lot of people who are associated with him. Now, some of these, though I say some of these powerful people, have done nothing wrong, they are still likely, some of them may have slept with some of the women, because you've got to remember that 99% of the women that Jeffrey Epstein had were over legal age. Some of them are registered escorts. They're fully documented as being escorts at the time. We don't know if some of them had slept with them. We just don't know. There's no way of telling. But with regards to his death, going back to his death, I believe that there are it still needs a proper investigation. And that is for my next book. I have been investigating the death and after a few things that I can't go into right now, to be honest. But there are too many unanswered questions, too many coincidences from that night, his final night. We forget that there was an original incident where Jeffrey Epstein was found. There was a commotion in his cell. Suddenly he wakes up. Suddenly they burst open the door. They find his cellmate.
That's right.
So the cellmate who they put him in with, Nick, claims he's innocent, etc. I'm not going to touch on that right now. But why did they put him in with somebody who is supposed to have committed multiple murders, and yet they chose him as a safe and non-aggressive, that's the term they used, this is a non-aggressive, safe cellmate. And on this incident, the guards, the prison officers burst into the cell. Jeffrey's snoring, the noose has been taken off of him, and he's gone unconscious. The first thing he says when he wakes up is, "Nick tried to kill me." His cellmate tried to kill him. Excuse me. Now he went back on that later on and said, "Oh, I'm confused," but they think he might have been frightened into talking about that. But he had mentioned that before, that people were going to harm him. So then you've got the CCTV cameras not working at the same time. You've got the prison guards falling asleep on the watch conveniently. You've got one who allegedly claims that a prisoner, potentially Epstein, was shipped out just shortly before. Now, that needs exploring properly before it's completely debunked or proven. You never know. But Jeffrey Epstein is a man who had the means to organize an escape if he wanted to. But I don't believe that happened. I believe that he died. We just don't know if it was suicide or not. There are multiple reasons why we shouldn't close the book as case solved on the death of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, I mean, if people wanted him dead, I mean, maybe it was just they were embarrassed. Maybe they did sleep with some of these underage girls that were recruited by Virginia, and I believe you said Haley, if I'm not right.
Haley Robinson. Yeah.
So, okay, question. So there's a lot of names that were mentioned. Sorry,
we might have the same question, which is just there has been millions of documents that have come out. There is new stuff coming out, whatever it is. Have we learned anything from it? And is there anyone who actually might be criminally implicated, even if it's just on the level of what Epstein himself was?
Yeah, no, you've got sort of things that you could highlight as potentially fraudulent that have been raised from the documents. But I think the people so let's look at why these were released. And again, it goes for political and financially motivated. You had the lawyers who need this to be released because they still have ongoing lawsuits. They've got them against institutions like banks. The last one paid out over $100 million, and they get up to 40% of that, the lawyers. So it's good for them to keep this story alive and to keep these bankers and targets trembling. And then, of course, you have the House Democrats. And I'm sorry, but they do not give a damn about justice or victims, or they only care about going after Donald Trump. And yet nothing has been found in them. That's why they've been pushing for it. The lawyers, if you look into it, the David Boies, etc., have admitted that they've been working with the House Democrats pro bono. And they've been helping orchestrate this entire smear campaign. And yet what has been revealed is really disappointing for them, because there isn't anything. Don't get me wrong, there are some fascinating things in there, some really interesting scandals and things that arise and connections that we didn't know about. But none of them are illegal. What you're seeing is guilt by association. They're looking for photographs of, and it's the way that they portray them. So they get the media to put out the headline, a victim of Jeffrey Epstein was in the presence of Donald Trump. But then they admit intentionally, they redact the name of the victim. And yet we know the victim was Virginia Giuffre, and that Virginia Giuffre had said, well, no, I met Donald Trump. He was a gentleman. He did nothing wrong. So they're weaponizing the Epstein files. They want to use it to keep the story alive, to confuse the hell out of the public, and to make money. And that is what most of this is about, making money. And from the politician side, it's about using this to keep the heat and the pressure on Donald Trump. And yet they are really disappointed because they've not been able to find anything explosive, and they've definitely not been able to find anything damaging against the president whatsoever.
So I want to go through rapid fire name by name that have been implicated in this recent drop. And we got to keep our answers tight here because we're running low on time here, and there's so much to go through. But we've got one minute left in this segment. But just touch on the Pizzagate thing. They mentioned pizza. They mentioned so obviously this makes us think back
steak,
a few years.
All the steak mentions. A lot of people are fixated on that.
Is there anything there that you can see?
People like pizza. People like pizza. People like steak. We've got to, I worked in politics before. Where do you go for a campaign meeting? You go to a pizza house. You all meet. It's the go-to thing. The problem is when you take thousands, tens and tens of thousands of emails and only pick out the emails that say pizza. I bet if we looked through your emails or my emails, we would find references to pizza. We might find some to steak. And when they're put out there without any context, then you can spin this whole conspiracy theory and all these wild narratives. So you've looked at the
emails in context, you're saying? You've looked at them?
100%. And many of these emails, we've got to remember, about 90% of what we're seeing in the Epstein files so far is already out there. So I have seen them. I've seen the context. There is nothing sinister.
I just checked. I have talking about 94 emails about pizza in my Gmail.
I don't think I have any. I think
I keep that quiet. Right. You're going to end up on a list.
We'll be right back. All right, we're here with Jay Beecher. Been covering Epstein for 6 years, interviewed a lot of people, including Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Virginia Giuffre's inner circle. Jay, we see references to Goy. Is there any indication? I mean, obviously you think Mossad, you think Israeli connections, Ehud Barak, any of that stuff. Obviously Jeffrey Epstein's Jewish.
That's not what I think.
Wow. Is there anything there? Because that's a term that would be offensive. Did he sort of see himself as a us versus them? Anything there?
Well, if you go back to the context and read it in there, he's actually joking when he mentions that Goyim. I can't remember who it is now, who asks him the question, are there Jewish people there? No, she says something like, that'll be a predominantly Jewish event. It's like a dinner party or something. And he said, no, there'll be a lot of Goyim there. But it's tongue-in-cheek. When you read his emails, and particularly the emails that he's had in exchange with this person before, they joke and banter a lot. So it is just a tongue-in-cheek comment. It's not. There's nothing. Sort of like they're the master race, or there's nothing like that in there at all. Once again, it comes down to context and reading. When you spend years reading how Jeffrey Epstein talks, he did actually joke quite a lot. He did make a lot of sort of tongue-in-cheek
Did he
comments.
make any references of killing people or offing people? I've seen rumors of that. We have 20 seconds and I have another break here, and we'll be.
Yeah, so there's a couple of emails where he jokes about killing people, and they're clearly evidence as jokes. But then there's an accuser who accused him in the documents of killing certain victims. And yet this accuser, because her name's redacted, the public don't know. I've already looked into her, and she was debunked many, many years ago as a complete fantasist.
Got to welcome back. Do we have it? There we go. All right, Jay Beecher. So I just asked you about references to Jeffrey Epstein killing people. You're saying the accuser was debunked as not a reliable person, basically.
Yeah, not just that. She was found to have had a history of serious mental health problems and of making false accusations. And those claims were investigated and found not to be credible.
All right.
So it's not like, this is anything new.
Rapid fire here, or the last segment. We've got 7 minutes left. Peter Thiel, what did we learn?
Not much about Peter Thiel. There's not much. I've focused less on Peter Thiel. At the moment, I've been focusing more on Prince Andrew and on Peter Mandelson and people like that. And of course... Elon
Musk. Elon Musk, what did we learn?
Elon Musk. So I had known, when I very first saw Elon put out this claim that he had photobombed, Ghislaine Maxwell had photobombed him. I knew that to be a lie anyway, because I'd already interviewed some of Ghislaine Maxwell's siblings, and he was close friends with Ghislaine Maxwell, but they wanted to distance themselves. Elon Musk and other people wanted to say, no, I wasn't very close with them at all. So, but there isn't anything damning against Elon Musk. Again, it's guilt by association. Of course, he knew Ghislaine Maxwell. He knew he knew Jeffrey Epstein. He was invited to the island, but didn't go to the island. So there's absolutely nothing in the Epstein files that is critical about Elon Musk.
So he basically just wanted to go to a party. And by the way, Elon Musk has been public. He wants to see Jeffrey Epstein, the accusers, and the actual victims, these underage girls. Wants to see justice for them. Obviously, Jeffrey Epstein's already dead, so there's only so much you could do. But if anybody else was involved, so Prince Andrew, you mentioned Prince Andrew. What did we learn and are learning about Prince Andrew?
So a lot of what you're seeing now, that these headlines are saying this new revelation has been found against Prince Andrew in the Epstein files. It's a lie. There are allegations that have been public for many, many years and available. People just haven't looked for them. Like I say, going back to it with Prince Andrew, Virginia is the only person who has accused him. She originally claimed she didn't have sex with him at all. Then she claimed that she had sex with him in New Mexico. Then she claimed a few other things and admitted that it was a complete lie. So I think that whilst he has made some mistakes in the past and has not helped himself, with regards to this, he is innocent.
He was just cheating, pretend, though, right? I mean, he was essentially going outside of his marriage. We know that much, correct?
Well, you've got to remember he was divorced. Long before he ever supposedly met Virginia Giuffre, he was already divorced. Okay. He lives still with his wife Fergie. But here we have. So the latest revelation that the headlines are going mad about is that a new woman has accused Prince Andrew. She said that when she was about 24, she met Prince Andrew. She slept with Prince Andrew. That the following morning they woke up, had breakfast together, and he gave her a tour of Buckingham Palace, and then she said goodbye and left. Now that's seen as a big scandal, but here we have a single divorcee supposedly sleeping, if it's true, with an adult woman of her own free will. And suddenly you've got the lawyers saying, he must pay up more money to help her get over her trauma. I don't know what trauma. I think he should be invoicing her. I had to pay for a tour of Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, fair enough. Bill Gates.
Bill Gates is obviously the damning email about him supposedly getting an STI. Now, I don't know if that's true. Nobody knows except from Jeffrey Epstein, who's dead, and Bill Gates, who is alive, but he isn't going to go on any shows too soon. So it could be true. I don't know about Bill Gates, but it's very damaging for his reputation. Not because he was associated with Jeffrey Epstein, but that I think that one claim about him in the email from Jeffrey is is going to stick with him and smear him for a long time.
So there is something you told me about that I actually found surprising, and I think it gets lost in all the noise here. You know, my assumption was that Jeffrey Epstein was sleeping with all of these women. This is going to be a little graphic. So if you have young kids in the room with you right now, please earmuffs or take them away. Do your best to not be so graphic, but that's not the case apparently. Can you explain? No. He had some deformities. Do your best.
He had so. Jeffrey Epstein has admitted this himself. Ghislaine Maxwell has testified to this, and 99% of the victims have all corroborated each other when they say this. And yeah, apologies for being 18 plus here, but he was proven to have erectile dysfunction. He couldn't get it up, basically. He was taking medication for that. It wasn't working. He was taking testosterone for that. He was a very frustrated man. The victims have all stated that he had a deformity as well. That he wasn't exactly the biggest of chaps, let's just put it that way, and that he would not have sexual intercourse with them. If you read the lawsuits themselves and read the testimonies, you'll see that 99% of the time he did not have sexual, like full sex with these people. He was a person who would that's why the massage table was there. He would be massaged, and whilst the massage was happening, he would use a toy on one of the girls and he would masturbate. That's the cleanest I can put it, Andrew, I'm afraid.
Yeah. But this is I think people have it in their mind that it's, yeah, there were these girls around, people would want to party with Jeffrey Epstein, and, you know, they might have done other things, but him particularly, that was a revelation to me, because I just was assuming it's
interesting how the same thing has come into play with the Harvey Weinstein case, that he also apparently had deformities down there that hinder a lot of the allegations.
We were talking about this earlier. There is a lot of psychology that's been into this, and some of the biggest people who have committed sexual assault or prolific in committing sexual assault, a very high portion of them have found to have had erectile dysfunction or some sort of deformity, and it internalizes their sexual frustration, and then they lash out on or try and do it other ways, or they're so sexually charged. And Jeffrey Epstein was the most sex-obsessed person I think I've ever read about and looked into.
Well,
and that's not talked about, but it wasn't sex. He was into BDSM. He was into, but his main thing was self-pleasure, because he couldn't get anyone else to bring him to that point of satisfaction.
That's I know it's graphic, and I apologize to our viewers. I think it's important, though, to get the truth, and the truth is it's some sort of mix between the lies and the headlines, and I think, it's interesting. We kind of end where we started, that President Trump was probably proven right in a lot of it. I do not support the messaging necessarily. I think it was counterproductive. Yeah. But President Trump knew this guy was just a creep that was leeching off a lot of people and a fraudster. And he was a kink, sexually charged, certainly, and has done a lot of bad things. But a lot of people are getting smeared by guilt by association in this story. And I think that's interesting. I'm going to finish up with you in just a few more minutes. Got to say goodbye to Real America's Voice, our great friends there. We'll see you tomorrow. A few more minutes with Jay Beecher. We'll be right back.
Real America's Voice is growing, and now it's all in one place. Introducing the new and improved RAV app, built for access, community, and choice, not paywalls. Here's the key. RAV is still free to watch. No sign-in, no membership required. Your favorite live streams, breaking coverage, and video on demand are all right there. Free, just like always.
For the War Room Posse, we have to be a force multiplier on this. We have to stick the landing.
In the White House, in the Oval Office, you're crushing it, my friend.
And if you want more, the members section is your backstage pass. Get exclusive behind-the-scenes photos and videos, insider moments from the studio and the field, and early access to new content before it goes public. Members can also unlock special experiences like virtual meet and greets, member-only auctions, and select event access, plus commercial-free viewing of certain shows inside the app. It's not just an app, it's a community. Download the RAV app today. Find it in the App Store and Google Play. Patriots, it's time to gear up. Real America's Voice has an entire lineup of merch made just for you.
We got some Rav fans out here.
We watch you every day.
From mugs that start your morning strong to hoodies, hats, t-shirts, pants, vests, flags, and so much more.
Yeah, I noticed it. I mean, that caught my eye big time.
Every piece lets you wear your pride loud and clear. This isn't just merch, it's a movement. When you shop Rav, you're showing the world you're proud to be part of the Real America's Voice family.
God bless Real America's Voice.
So don't wait. Scan the QR code right now or visit realamericasvoice.launchcart.store to shop today.
Thank you, Real America's Voice, for doing true journalism.
Stand tall, be bold, be proud. Represent your voice with Real America's Voice.
It's good to have a real news network out there, so I'm a big fan.
Use code RAVSWAG10 for 10% off.
Real America's Voice rocks.
Now is the moment to put your brand in front of an engaged, loyal audience through Real America's Voice. When you advertise on Real America's Voice, you're not just running an ad, you're partnering with trusted voices like Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, and other influential hosts. Backed by millions of monthly listeners.
What's happening? Because of the Real Voice, man. I watch it all the time.
Real America's Voice rocks.
Real America's Voice gives sponsors the chance to put their product front and center, displayed on screen and highlighted by our anchors during exclusive segments and live events.
Head to freetrumpknife.com.
This means your brand becomes part of the conversation as it happens.
Secure your spot before it's too late.
Join us today and make your brand part of the news conversation that America's viewers trust. Real America's Voice, where your message is seen, heard, and remembered.